A nação nos mandou executar um serviço. Nós o fizemos com amor, aplicação e sem medo.
Prepare to unlearn, not because you're uninformed, but because you were very well taught, the wrong version of reality. From an early age, we are told a simple story, a clean story, a story that fits perfectly into school books, election debates, and breaking news headlines. The story goes like this. The world is governed by countries. Countries are governed by presidents, and presidents make decisions that shape the future of humanity. It's neat, it's comforting, and it is incredibly convenient. There is just one problem. It doesn't explain the world you actually live in. If presidents truly governed the world, elections would change everything. Markets would transform overnight. Global priorities would shift dramatically. History would take sharp turns every 4 or 5 years. But look closely. The faces change. The parties change. The slogans change. And yet, the system remains remarkably stable. Or perhaps a better word is predictable. You may have felt this before, even if you couldn't quite explain it. That strange sensation that politics feels like a performance. So much noise, so much outrage, so little structural change. Today, we are going to do something uncomfortable. We are going to remove power from the brightly lit stage, where it pretends to live and observe, calmly and honestly, where it actually operates. Prepare to unlearn. The world is not governed by presidents. And once you understand this, you will never watch the news the same way again. A quick warning before we continue. This is not a comforting video. There are no easy villains, no ready-made heroes, no simple answers. This is not content for slogans, and it certainly isn't designed for shallow arguments. If you are willing to think, stay with me. If you are looking for certainty and emotional comfort, this may not be the channel for you. So let's begin with the obvious question almost no one asks. What does a president actually control? Presidents give speeches, they sign laws, they veto bills, they represent their countries at international summits. All of that is true, and all of that is limited, because there is a massive difference between holding the highest office and controlling the system itself. Presidents are elected, systems are not. Systems do not campaign. They do not ask for votes. They do not debate. They simply react. They react with interest rates, with capital flows, with credit ratings, with market confidence. Neutral-sounding words, technical words, words that feel almost scientific. But in practice, these are tools of discipline. Let's talk about markets. There is a form of power that does not shout. It does not make emotional speeches. It does not promise anything, but it punishes instantly. Financial markets do not vote, but they decide. They react in seconds. Before the first decree, before the first mistake, before the first real policy is even attempted, a president is elected. Within minutes, currencies move, stock markets rise or fall. Investors decide whether this government inspires confidence. And confidence here does not mean ethics. It does not mean social justice. It does not mean public well-being. Confidence means predictability. Markets love predictability. They don't care much about who governs, as long as the script remains familiar. When a government threatens to leave that script, the system responds. Not with tanks, not with coups in the old-fashioned sense, but with something far more effective: economic instability. Currencies weaken, inflation rises, credit dries up, unemployment grows, and suddenly the narrative writes itself. The government is failing. Notice how elegant this is. No one needs to overthrow anyone. The system simply applies pressure until society demands change on its own. Now think honestly, if you were president, knowing that stepping outside certain boundaries could trigger chaos, how free would you really be? This is the first invisible limit of political power. You are allowed to govern, as long as you don't challenge the core mechanisms. But markets don't act alone. They have arms, and some of those arms are enormous. This brings us to global investment funds. Some investment funds manage more money than the entire annual budgets of dozens of countries. They have no flag, no anthem, no electorate. Their only loyalty is to returns. They decide where money flows, where it stays, and where it never comes back. When a major fund exits a country, it's not just capital that leaves. Confidence disappears. Credit becomes expensive. Companies shut down. Projects are cancelled. Governments enter crisis. And no one ever voted for these funds. Yet presidents know very well that they exist. They know that challenging them has consequences. They know that confronting them requires something most governments lack: time and political resilience. Now let's go one layer deeper. Even if a president wants to control the economy, there is often an institution beyond their direct reach: the central bank. Central banks control the heart of modern economies. Interest rates, money supply, credit conditions, inflation. These decisions affect everything: the price of food, the cost of housing, job creation, public debt. In many countries, central banks are independent from elected governments. The official justification is to protect the economy from political interference. In practice, this places the most critical economic levers outside direct democratic control. We have political democracy, but economic technocracy. You choose who speaks, but not who decides how expensive life will be. And if this already feels uncomfortable, prepare yourself. We are still at the surface, because now we enter the most powerful territory of the 21st century: data. For centuries, power meant land, then it meant factories, then it meant oil. Today, power means information, and more precisely, behavioral data. Digital platforms know what you buy, what you ignore, what angers you, what calms you, what keeps you scrolling. They shape your perception of reality. Not by telling you what to think, but by deciding what you will think about. Presidents speak, algorithms decide who is heard, and that changes everything, because whoever controls attention controls perceived reality. Now we arrive at the most underestimated form of power of all: narrative. Narrative is not lying. Narrative is framing. It is deciding which stories matter, which ones are amplified, which ones quietly disappear. It is deciding who is seen as rational, who is seen as irresponsible, who is seen as dangerous. Countries live inside narratives. So do governments. Some countries are allowed to fail, others are not. Some are bold, others are reckless. And this has less to do with what they do and more to do with who controls the story told about them. When you understand this, something unsettling becomes clear. Power rarely needs to govern directly. It only needs to define the boundaries of what is acceptable. Presidents operate inside those boundaries. They can change the tone, change the style, change the aesthetics, but changing the structure itself, that is another conversation entirely. And this is where many people become frustrated. They invest all their hope in individual figures without realizing the game is larger than any single player. But stay with me. This does not mean nothing matters, and it does not mean change is impossible. It simply means real change does not begin where we were taught to look. And that is exactly what we are going to explore next. If you've made it this far, you've probably realized something important already. The problem was never a lack of information. It was an excess of simplification. The real world is far too complex to fit neatly into campaign slogans. But at some point, it became extremely convenient to pretend that it does. This is where one of the most effective tricks of modern power comes into play, turning presidents into the main characters of the story. Heroes when it's useful, villains when it's necessary. Presidents become the face of hope, and later, the face of disappointment. This mechanism is brilliant in its simplicity, because while everyone argues about personalities, tweets, scandals, tone of voice, or political style, the structures keep operating quietly, far away from the spotlight. Political spectacle is loud on purpose. It occupies mental space. It consumes attention, and attention is a limited resource. While people argue over whether a president is good or bad, almost no one asks why certain decisions seem unavoidable, no matter who is in office. Listen carefully to how political language repeats itself around the world. Our hands are tied. The economic reality demands it. The markets expect this. There is no alternative. That last sentence is especially revealing. There is no alternative. The moment someone says that, the debate is over before it even begins. This is how structural power operates. It doesn't need to convince you of what is right. It only needs to convince you that nothing else is possible. Now let's talk about the illusion of choice. You vote, you choose between candidates, you participate, but look carefully at the menu. The options vary within an acceptable range. It's like choosing a meal at a restaurant where the menu has already been decided. You can choose chicken or fish, but you can't redesign the kitchen. And when a candidate tries to radically change the menu, the labels appear almost instantly. Irresponsible, radical, dangerous, populist, unrealistic. The narrative activates before the policy even exists. And this brings us to the role of the media. Not in the simplistic sense of the media lies. That explanation is too easy and far too comforting. The media does not need to lie. It frames, it chooses tone, it chooses repetition, it chooses what is urgent and what quietly fades away. When a government takes a decision aligned with the system, it is described as mature, responsible, necessary. When a government steps outside the script, the same action becomes risky, controversial, dangerous. Same act, different framing. This creates a powerful psychological environment. Governments begin to govern out of fear. Fear not only of markets, but of narrative collapse. Now let's go even deeper. Even when a president has popular support, they face a structural problem. Time. Political mandates are short. Markets are patient. Governments need results quickly. Investors think in decades. Funds think in generations. Who do you think has the advantage? Any attempt at deep structural change requires time. Time for adjustment, time for mistakes, time for learning. But the system punishes mistakes immediately. One experimental policy, one poorly phrased speech, one unexpected decision, and the reaction is instant. Pressure, instability, panic. The lesson is clear. Do not experiment too much. This is why policies across different countries often look strangely similar. Similar reforms, similar priorities, similar language. This is not coincidence, it is enforced convergence. The global system rewards predictability and punishes deviation. And here, we reach a rarely discussed point, how political elites are formed. Many world leaders pass through the same institutions, the same universities, the same economic forums, the same international organizations. They speak the same technical language. They share the same worldview. They internalize the same limits of what is realistic. Before they ever reach power, they have already learned how far they are allowed to go. The system doesn't need to control everyone. It only needs to shape the paths to the top. Now let's return to the central question. If presidents don't govern the world, why are they still so important? Because they serve a crucial function. They legitimize the system. They give human faces to impersonal decisions. They turn technical processes into apparent political choices. They absorb frustration. When something goes wrong, it is far easier to blame a person than an invisible structure. This protects the system from deep questioning. And here is the cruel irony. The more you believe everything depends on presidents, the less you question how power actually works. You fight over names, over parties, over surface-level ideologies. Meanwhile, the machinery keeps running. But don't misunderstand this. This is not an argument for apathy, and it is not an argument for nihilism. Understanding structural power is the first step out of political infantilization. It means realizing that voting matters, but it does not solve everything. That presidents have limits, but those limits can be pushed. That systems are powerful, but not immutable. Real change never starts at the top. It starts with collective understanding. And in the next section, we are going to enter the most uncomfortable territory of all. We are going to talk about why the system needs you to believe that presidents govern the world. And what happens when too many people begin to see beyond the stage. There is a reason this illusion is so carefully protected. A world where people believe presidents control everything is a world where responsibility is misplaced. Because if power is concentrated in individuals, then changing the individual feels like changing the system. Vote harder, elect better people, wait for the next election. This belief keeps hope alive, but safely contained. The real danger to the system is not anger, it's understanding. Anger burns fast. Understanding reorganizes everything. The moment people begin to ask structural questions, the political conversation changes entirely. Not who is in power, but why does power work this way at all? And this is where things become uncomfortable, because once you see the structure, you can't unsee it. You start noticing patterns, different countries, different presidents, same outcomes, different speeches, same economic constraints, different promises, same disappointments. This repetition is not coincidence, it is architecture. The global system was designed to survive political turnover, to remain stable regardless of elections, to neutralize disruption. This is why radical change is framed as chaos, why stability is treated as moral virtue, why questioning fundamentals is seen as dangerous. Stability is not neutral. It benefits those already on top. Now, let's be brutally honest. Presidents do have power, but it is conditional power. They can manage the system, they can optimize it, they can soften or harden its edges, but redesigning it entirely, that requires forces far beyond a single office. It requires social pressure, cultural shifts, narrative change. Power is not only economic, it is psychological. What people accept as normal is one of the strongest forms of control. This is why narratives matter so much. Who defines what is possible? Who defines what is realistic? Who defines what is irresponsible? Once those definitions are set, most debates become performative. Now let's talk about the most effective tool of modern power: distraction. Permanent outrage, endless scandals, constant emergencies. When everything feels urgent, nothing can be examined deeply. Outrage keeps people emotionally engaged, but intellectually exhausted. And exhaustion leads to simplification. Good versus evil. Left versus right. Us versus them. Complex systems hate simplification, but they thrive when people stop thinking structurally. This is why political content is often designed to provoke reaction, not reflection. Reflection slows the system down. Reaction feeds it. And here comes the most uncomfortable realization of all. The system does not need your silence. It needs your participation on its terms. Argue loudly. Choose sides. Defend identities. Just don't question the framework. This is why discussions about the system itself are often labeled as abstract, boring, or unrealistic. They are the conversations power fears the most. So what does real political maturity look like? It looks like understanding that elections are tools, not solutions. That leaders matter, but structures matter more. That real change is slow, collective, and deeply uncomfortable. It requires patience. It requires coordination. It requires resisting easy narratives. And most importantly, it requires unlearning. Unlearning the idea that power is simple. Unlearning the idea that one person can save or destroy everything. Unlearning the comfort of blame. Because once you stop blaming individuals, you start questioning systems. And systems do not respond to outrage. They respond to pressure, sustained pressure, informed pressure, collective pressure. This is not a call to cynicism. It is a call to clarity. The world is not governed by presidents. It is governed by incentives. by capital flows, by narratives, by structures built over decades. Presidents are actors on a stage whose script was written long before they arrived. Understanding this does not make politics meaningless. It makes it serious. It shifts the question from who should rule us to what kind of system are we willing to accept. And that question, once asked by enough people, becomes impossible to ignore. If this video made you uncomfortable, that's a good sign. It means something cracked. If it made you rethink how power works, even better. And if you know someone who still believes the world is run by presidents, share this video with them, not to convince, but to provoke. And before you go, subscribe to this channel, because here we don't explain the world to make it more comfortable. We explain it so you can't go back to sleep. Prepare to unlearn.